Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Scott Selections here for Friday, August 14th. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a special edition. I know that we already made a video for today, but it's actually going to be on a futures parlay with regard to the upcoming NBA first-round series matchups. So I'm going to be looking at a two-pick here in the series. This is available on DraftKings, and overall, I expect these lines to change. So for that reason, I think there's too much value on these lines now, and I expect them to move accordingly. So I'm going to be giving out this two-pick parlay right now. The two picks are going to be the Los Angeles Clippers minus 1.5 games against the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics minus 1.5 games in the series against the 76ers. And those two picks are equal to a plus 159 parlay, and that is available on DraftKings. So I'm going to break down each individual matchup right now. First matchup is going to be on the Clippers and the Mavericks. Simply put, Clippers are the much better team, especially now that Harrell is going to be making his return during the playoffs. Might take him a couple of games to get fully acclimated, but once again, he is still going to help out that bench unit. Lou Williams already looks sharp after missing a couple games early on. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are healthy. Beverly is still a little bit up in the air, but in reality, the issue you have with Dallas is the fact that Dallas plays absolutely no defense, and I think that's going to be a serious concern moving forward. Plus, Porzingis has a heel issue, which cost him playing at all in the season finale. Of course, the game didn't really mean anything, but Porzingis had some injury issues in the past, and even if he is still able to play well, you have to wonder if he's going to potentially break down at some point during the series, especially having to guard some of the bigger bodies that the Clippers have to offer. Pick-and-roll situations are going to force him to cover Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. Good luck trying to guard them with a heel issue. If you want to break down the actual matchup so far during the course of the regular season, the Clippers fared pretty well as they ended up winning all three games. So they ended up sweeping the regular season series, with one game being decided by 3 points and the other two games being decided by exactly 15 points. So the Mavericks haven't even been close to really beating the Clippers, and I simply think the Clippers have too much talent, especially when healthy. And Dallas, despite having Doncic and Porzingis, who else do they really have? I know that they were playing Boban a little bit late, but of course that's just a matchup thing, and I don't think that's really going to work against the Clippers. But in reality, I mean, who are you relying on? Maxi Kleber? Tim Hardaway Jr.? I don't really know who you're going to be relying on to give you points, especially with Kawhi and Paul George taking turns guarding Doncic. They played a somewhat close game in the last meeting. At least it was for a little while, and the Clippers blew the game open as they ended up playing a week or two ago. Game was close, and the Clippers outscored them by 11 in the fourth quarter. They won by 15. But the main issue you have is that I just don't think Dallas can guard anybody, and I think the Clippers are a very solid defensive team. And Dallas, I don't expect them to take it to 7 games. I don't think they're going to win the series, and they'll probably lose in 5 or 6. But in reality, a sweep would not surprise me either. I think the Clippers are just ready for the playoffs, and I expect Dallas to struggle, especially on the defensive end, with a less than 100% Porzingis in the lineup. So that's going to be the first play. And the second play in the parlay is going to be between the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't really know if I really have to break this down because I feel like we have this conversation every time the Celtics play the 76ers in the playoffs. The 76ers now are going to be without Ben Simmons, even though Simmons might be an issue in terms of floor spacing because he can't shoot. He's still either the best perimeter defender on the team or the second best behind Tybal, but Tybal's more of a role player. So now that the 76ers are without their starting point guard, they're going to be relying a lot on Harris, Horford, and Embiid. But now Embiid has a leg issue and a wrist issue. He's also kind of banged up a little bit. And the Celtics have fared pretty well against the 76ers in the past. Breaking down the matchup so far in the regular season, though, the 76ers did win 3 of the 4 regular season meetings. But in reality, I think everyone knows that playoff basketball is different. And at the same point, I think we can all agree that Brad Stevens once again is going to coach circles around Brett Brown. I don't think it's going to be close. Stevens knows exactly how to handle the rotations with his team. I still think Brown's trying to tinker with it, especially now with all the injuries available. If you want to break down the 76ers, they look disastrous down the stretch. They lost their last 3 games. They've given up at least 124 points in each of their last 3 games. They can't play defense at all. Meanwhile, the Celtics were actually on fire, if you want to break it down. Celtics were in the middle of a 4-game winning streak before benching all the starters and even most of the bench players against the Wizards and losing the finale. But they easily could have been entering the playoffs on a 5-game winning streak. The better overall team. I think Philly maybe with Simmons could have potentially pushed it to 6 or 7. But in reality, with Embiid also not at 100% against the Celtics, who are just going to coach circles around Brown once again, I seriously think that Boston's just going to stretch the floor too well. You're wondering about what the lineup's going to be for the 76ers, where you're going to have Horford at the power forward and Embiid at the center, I guess. But the Celtics kind of spread it out wide with Tatum at the 4, and I think it's going to be a disastrous matchup for the 76ers, especially with Tice, who's a pretty versatile defender at the center spot. So Kemba not being 100% is not ideal, but at the same point, they have been limiting his minutes. Perhaps he can go a little bit more in the playoffs, and Marcus Smart has played pretty well. But I expect Brown and Tatum to pretty much dominate on the wings, and I know Tobias Harris can't guard anybody. So for those reasons, I like the Celtics also minus 1.5 games in that series. That individual line's at minus 148. Clippers at minus 1.5. It's available at minus 186. Combine those two, the two-pick parlay once again is the Clippers minus 1.5 games in the first round series against the Mavericks, and the Celtics minus 1.5 games in their series against the 76ers. And now those two, once again, are plus 159 on DraftKings. That's been an installment of Scott Selections here for Friday, August 14th. A good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.